Shall be live.
We are alive.
We're live. I've got my um period hair going. The I don't give a damn.
Sure. My hair's, you can't really see it right now, but it's long enough that it's like starting to do things. I don't like that.
I like it. It's really cute.
We're going to shave it down again either tonight or tomorrow, probably tomorrow at this point. And then sometime I'm going to get some hair dye in the mail and dye it blue.
Dude. Blue is awesome. Are you bleaching it first?
Yes. Yeah, blue won't stick without bleach. It'll turn green.
Yeah, like right away. I'm letting people know to join us.
Yay.
We are a long expected podcast. That's the channel. Eh, 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 eh. There. Now that's a thing. And it's my turn to read, as I recall.
Tis indeed. I have my tea that looks like knitting.
It's so pretty.
I love it. I found it at like King Supers or somewhere totally random. And I was like, okay, so look, I know we said we weren't going to buy any more mugs, but I bought another mug.
And we're all going to be okay with this. This one. Yeah, that happens to us periodically. Starbucks had a mug. And first of all, Starbucks mugs tend to be really, really good, long lasting, like dishwasher friendly. And this one looks kind of like hammered metal, but it's ceramic. And I was like, this is mine now. And it was on sale. It was only like for 40% off. And I was like, yeah, I know we don't need it. I don't care.
Did I tell you when I brought home that whole set of dishes from the Goodwill? As for context, for people who may watch this and not know what I'm talking about, I went to a thrift store and they had some 1940s to 60s like Japanese china, like a full set for like 50 cents a piece. So I bought, it's really pretty. And so I bought it. It's even prettier now because it had like, whoever had owned it was a smoker. So it had just like nicotine just caked on there.
Yeah.
Like I should have taken before and after pictures. It was crazy. But anyways, so I brought that home and Sandy came in, and before she could see me, because I was in the kitchen washing the new dishes, I was like, so first of all, I can explain. And she went, is it a mug? And I went, well, it's not a mug.
It is all of the things.
Sometimes you just have to do stuff.
And did you make sure you pointed out to her there were almost 12 sets available and you only bought like half?
I don't know if I did mention that.
See? So it could have been so much worse. Or if not worse, at least as much space takey uppy. That doesn't actually have like a moral absolute attached to it.
Yeah, the only reason I didn't buy all 12 is because they weren't all complete. Like, let's not give me too much credit here. I thought about it.
But I don't want 12 of this and 11 of that and 9 of this.
Yeah, that would have bugged the crap out of me. And like the particular style of cup and stuff, I was like Googling to try and figure out when this stuff was made because it was like a very distinctive kind of 40s through 60s-ish shape.
Yeah.
Which I know for reasons. And like the style of cup that I had was not available anywhere online. So I don't think I could have completed the set.
Ooh, that would have been rough. Whereas I'm the kind of person who will buy single teacups so that when they break, I don't have to cry because my entire set is deliberately mismatched.
See, that's also a very valid way to go. That's probably the way I would have expected myself to go.
But you've always been more grown up than me. And one of the problems with that system I've found is that the plates tend to break a lot less than the cups. So you end up with like 140 tea plates and you still only have a dozen teacups.
Yeah.
The kids like to eat their dessert off tea plates, and that's great, but I don't want to. I'm going to have to go through and purge the plates at some point because there's a lot. I can break them and use them in my backyard mosaic project, which I've been working on for something like 3 years. And it's almost done.
Amen.
I had cancer, and then I was traveling, and then it was winter. That kept happening where I was like, I'd get in a roll, I'd get on in a groove, like, all right, I do some, I wait a couple days, I take them out of the molds, I do some more, like I got this shit going, and then the first hard freeze would come, and then there wouldn't be nights above 30 degrees for 3 months, and I'd be like,
well, global warming will take care of that for you.
Or we'll all start having hurricanes, because global warming doesn't just mean everybody's warmer.
True, but warmer will be a factor.
I'm expecting locusts next. You know, locusts or frogs, one of those.
Rivers running with blood.
Rivers are blurred. We could use the rapture up in here, frankly. Give the rest of us a little more elbow room.
Yeah, but you know the people who think they would be raptured and the people who actually would be raptured are entirely different groups of people, and then we'd have to deal with that shit. Do you want all of those, like, super right-wing conspiracy apocalypse nuts dealing with their disappointed daddy issues?
They'd probably manage to make it our fault.
That's what I'm worried about, yes.
Yeah. No, I need a rapture to happen where the people who think they're going to get raptured actually do. But then it turns out that being swept up into the clouds isn't all that they ever hoped it would be.
Well, I mean, it can't help you there.
Right. Ain't gonna happen. Back in my day, we had to make our own apocalypses. Apocalypses?
Apocalypse?
Apocalyptica.
Apocaloodles.
Apocalypse. We had to home grow them. We had to have our neighbors hoard toilet paper because that was just what we did. That was what they did. Anyway.
Yeah.
This is not where we were.
No, we were on Weathertop. As Nick would say, I hardly know her top. Also, look how big my sweater's getting.
That is so cool.
It's turning out really pretty, huh?
It is so pretty. I guess I'm risking things because Kit might someday watch this, but I totally want to make her baby a baby blanket, but I don't know what to choose. Like, we've got a lot of history. I could do a Pegasus. I could do a map of Theralia. I could do a Theralian flag. I could do a
Goth.
dragon. What?
Goth.
I could do.
If you made her a goth baby blanket, she would lose her mind. I'm telling you this because I have been requested to make some goth baby clothes. So I know the theme here. Excellent.
I might actually still have some of Abby's goth baby clothes. Most of them are more nerdy than gothy, though. He had a onesie that said Stormageddon, Dark Lord of All.
I don't think that would work with Kit. She doesn't like Doctor Who.
I wouldn't think so.
It's not her cup of tea.
No. It's too mainstream.
She just felt like if they had all this potential to address actual historical situations and they just went off and were silly in space or something to that effect. I
Check.
don't think I'm putting her point as clearly as she would put it herself. I'm probably not doing it justice, but
It's fair.
it was the general gist.
I liked the silly and space bits in a lot of cases better than the historical bits.
Yes, but we were there for the silly and space bits. Like, that's what we wanted from it.
Yeah.
It's all about what you want from something, you know?
That does make a huge difference in your perception of its success rate.
Yeah. I have to do that a lot with writing book reviews where I'm like, okay, am I reviewing the book I read or am I reviewing the book I wanted to read?
Right? I found a book once whose title was so freaking awesome, and then the book itself didn't stand up to. Well, it just wasn't. The title was Witch and Wombat, and even the
I remember
premise.
that book. It was terrible.
Yeah, it was really bad, but the premise was great, and the title was awesome, and the execution kind of wad.
Alas. If you want to clear your mental history of wombat-related art, read Digger by Ursula Vernon. You can find it online for free. It's a graphic novel. It won the Hugo Award.
Cool.
Or the Eisner. Did it win the Eisner?
One of those.
One of those. But it's several awards because it was really, really freaking good. And it's about a wombat.
Did you hear about the Orange Menace tweeting about journalists getting the Nobel Prize and how they should give back their Nobel Prizes? And when somebody pointed out to him that his pun was meaningless because Nobel Prizes aren't given to journalists, he threw a hissy fit. But what the saddest thing about that entire anecdote is the fact that, like, Peabody, right, for journalists?
Mm-hmm.
Imagine the terrible puns he could have made with the word Peabody.
It's not smart enough.
No.
I'm like, the man can't make wordplay. Are you kidding me? He's not smart enough for that shit.
He would have had fun trying.
Well, then I'm glad he didn't. I don't want him to have any fun.
Speaking of people who probably believe they're going to be raptured.
I couldn't even begin to imagine what goes on in his head. It's probably just
I picture a little hamster wheel.
I picture a rave full of screaming gibbons.
Do not malign raves that way.
Oh, what just happened? I am very upset.
Shit.
Hold on. Everything pause.
Okay.
Almost there. We've become an ASMR channel. There we go. Okay. All right.
Yay!
The day is saved. I do just need to reattach this knitting needle to the cable. I don't know why it did that. I thought I had it tightened down. It is supposed to come apart. For context, this is an interchangeable set, which means that it's the ends of the needle attached to the cable like this, and they screw on. And that way you can buy just some cables and some needle tips and have whatever you need, right?
Right.
But it's not meant to do it in the middle of the row.
No.
So I'm going to need to find my Notion bag. I will be right back.
Okay, now that the day is saved, let's go get Frodo stabbed, shall we?
Sounds like a plan.
Can the riders see? Hadn't we better clear out quick? Nope. Do not speak that name so loudly, right? Oh, they can't hear me. It was already midday when they drew near the southern end of the path and saw before them, in the pale, clear light of the October sun, a gray-green bank leading up like a bridge onto the northward slope of the hill. They decided to make for the top. Oh my god, we've totally already been here, haven't we? Shit! They were at the top. No water, no shelter, and no sign of Gandalf, and that thing might stand for G. The enemy is here? Are we there? Help! Catch me up. It's been a few days. I thought we were at the bridge to the top, but no, we were at the top. We'd already looked at the stone. A lot more.
They looked at the stone. Well, yes, they went up to the top, they looked at the stone, then they saw the riders coming and headed back down towards Sam and
The enemy
Mary.
here, hastily they crept away and slipped down the north side of the hill to find their companions.
That is where we were.
Sam and Peregrine had not been idle. They had explored the small dell and the surrounding slopes. Not far away, they found a spring of clear water in the hillside, and near it, footprints not more than a day or two old. In the dell itself, they found recent traces of a fire and other signs of a hasty camp. There were some fallen rocks on the edge of the dell nearest to the hill. Behind them, Sam came upon a small store of firewood, neatly stacked. I wonder if old Gandalf has been here, he said to Pippin. Whoever it was put this stuff here meant to come back, it seems. Strider was greatly interested in these discoveries. I wish I had waited and explored the ground down here myself, he said, hurrying off to the spring to examine the footprints. It is just as I feared, he said when he came back. Sam and Pippin have trampled the soft ground, and the marks are spoilt or confused. Losers. Rangers have been here lately. It is they who left the firewood behind. But there are also several newer tracks that were not made by rangers. At least one set was made only a day or two ago by heavy boots. At least one. I cannot now be certain, but I think there were many booted feet. He paused and stood in anxious thought. Each of the hobbits saw in his mind a vision of the cloaked and booted riders. If the horsemen had already found the dell, the sooner Strider led them somewhere else, the better. Sam viewed the hollow with great dislike now that he had heard news of their enemies on the road, only a few miles away. Hadn't we better clear out quick, Mr. Strider? He asked impatiently. It is getting late, and I don't like this hole. It makes my heart sink somehow. Yes, we certainly must decide what to do at once, answered Strider, looking up and considering the time and the weather. Well, Sam, he said at last, I do not like this place either, but I cannot think of anywhere better that we could reach before nightfall. At least we are out of sight for the moment, and if we moved, we should be much more likely to be seen by spies. All we could do would be to go right out of our way back north on this side of the line of hills where the land is all much the same as it is here. The road is watched, but we should have to cross it if we tried to take cover in the thickets away to the south. On the north side of the road beyond the hills, the country is bare and flat for miles. Can the riders see? Asked Mary. I mean, they seem usually to have used their noses rather than their eyes, smelling for us, if smelling is the right word, at least in the daylight. But you made us lie down flat when you saw them down below, and now you talk of being seen if we move. I was too careless on the hilltop, answered Strider. I was very anxious to find some sign of Gandalf, but it was a mistake for 3 of us to go up and stand there so long. For the black horses can see, and the riders can use men and other creatures as spies, as we found at Bree. They themselves do not see the world of light as we do, but our shapes cast shadows in their minds, which only the noon sun destroys. And in the dark they perceive many signs and forms that are hidden from us. Then they are most to be feared. And at all times they smell the blood of living things, desiring and hating it. Senses, too, there are other than sight or smell. We can feel their presence. It troubled our hearts as soon as we came here, and before we saw them. They feel ours more keenly. Also, he added, and his voice sank to a whisper, the ring draws them. Is there no escape then? Said Frodo, looking round wildly. Or are we fucked? If I move, I shall be seen and hunted. If I stay, I shall draw them to me. Strider laid his hand on his shoulder. There is still hope, he said. You are not alone. Let us take this wood that is set ready for the fire as a sign. There is little shelter or defense here, but fire shall serve for both. Sauron can put fire to his evil uses as he can all things, but these riders do not love it, and fear those who wield it. Fire is our friend in the wilderness. Maybe, muttered Sam, but it's also as good a way of saying here we are as I can think of, bar shouting. Down in the lowest and most sheltered corner of the dell, they lit a fire and prepared a meal. The shades of evening began to fall, and it grew cold. They were suddenly aware of great hunger, for they had not eaten anything since breakfast, but they dared not make more than a frugal supper. The lands ahead were empty of all save birds and beasts, unfriendly places deserted by all the races of the world. Rangers passed at times beyond the hills, but they were few, and did not stay. Other wanderers were rare and of evil sort. Trolls might stray down at times out of the northern valleys of the Misty Mountains. Only on the road would travelers be found, most often dwarves, hurrying along on business of their own and with no help and few words to spare for strangers. I don't see how our food can be made to last, said Frodo. We have been careful enough in the last few days, and this supper is no feast. But we have used more than we ought if we have 2 weeks still to go, and perhaps more. There is food in the wild, said Strider. Berry, root, and herb, and I have some skill as a hunter at need. You need not be afraid of starving before winter comes. But gathering and catching food is long and weary work, and we need haste. So tighten your belts and think with hope of the tables of Elrond's house. The cold increased as darkness came on. Peering out from the edge of the dell, they could see nothing but a grey land now vanishing quickly into shadow. The sky above had cleared again and was slowly filled with twinkling stars. Frodo and his companions huddled round the fire, wrapped in every garment and blanket they possessed. But Strider was content with a single cloak, and sat a little apart, drawing thoughtfully at his pipe.
Me, look at me, I'm Strider. I don't need a blanket, I'm too manly.
I'm so manly. As night fell and the light of the fire began to shine out brightly, he began to tell them tales to keep their minds from fear. He knew many histories and legends of long ago, of elves and men and the good and evil deeds of the elder days. They wondered how old he was and where he had learned all this lore. Tell us of Gil-galad, said Merry suddenly, when he paused at the end of a story of the elf kingdoms. Do you know any more of that old lay that you spoke of? I do indeed, answered Strider.
Me. I'm Strider. I know lots of lays.
I know so many lays. Always getting laid. So also does Frodo, for it concerns us closely. Merry and Pippin looked at Frodo, who was staring into the fire. I know only the little that Gandalf has told me, said Frodo slowly. Gil-galad was the last of the great elf kings of Middle-earth. Gil-galad is Starlight in their tongue. Very manly name, Starlight. His parents were hippies.
Look. Gender is a construct. And manliness is what you make it.
Yes. With Landil, the elf friend, he went to the land of... No, said Strider, interrupting. I do not think that tale should be told now with the servants of the enemy at hand. If we win through to the house of Elrond, you may hear it there, told in full. Then tell us some other tale of the old days, begged Sam. A tale about the elves before the fading time. I would dearly like to hear more about elves. The dark seems to press round so close. I will tell you the tale of Tinuviel, said Strider, in brief, for it is a long tale of which the end is not known. Spoilers. And there are none now except Elrond that remember it aright as it was told of old. It is a fair tale, though it is sad, as are all the tales of Middle-earth, and yet it may lift up your hearts, Song Alert. We'll do the first verse and the last verse. He was silent for some time, and then he began, not to speak, but to chant softly. The leaves were long, the grass was green, the hemlock umbels tall and fair, and in the glade a light was seen of stars in shadow, shimmering. Tinuviel was dancing there to music of a pipe unseen, and light of stars was in her hair, and in her raiment glimmering. Yada, 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 Beren saw her, true love, doom, doom, doom. Long was the way that Long was the way that fate them bore o'er stony mountains cold and grey, through halls of iron and darkling door and woods of nightshade morrowless. The sundering seas between them lay, and yet at last they met once more, and long ago they passed away in the forest singing sorrowless. Strider sighed and paused before he spoke again. That is a song, he said, in the mode that is called Anthenath among the elves, but is hard to render in our common speech, and this is but a rough echo of it. It tells of the meeting of Beren, son of Barahir, and Luthien Tinuviel. Beren was a mortal man, but Luthien was the daughter of Thingol, a king of elves upon Middle-earth when the world was young. Incidentally, her mom was a frickin' demigoddess, but let's not bring up mom, because...
Look. He was raised by Disney. He thinks that, moms are pointless.
Moms are pointless. Mom's only job is to die. Which Melian, of course, never did, because...
She was a goddess?
Yeah, Maiar don't do that. And Luthien was the fairest maiden that has ever been among all the children of this world.
Hang on, can we talk about how Luthien and her mom both had a thing for, going way below their league? Goddess, elf, beautiful elf maiden, dude.
Slumming.
They liked some rough trade.
Don't kink shame them.
Kink shaming is my kink. Have you seen that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh. She was the fairest maiden that has ever been among all the children of this world. As the stars above the mists of the northern lands was her loveliness, and in her face was a shining light. In those days, the great enemy, of whom Sauron of Mordor was but a servant, dwelt in Angband in the north, and the elves of the west, coming back to Middle-earth, made war upon him to regain the Silmarils which he had stolen. and the fathers of men aided the elves, but the enemy was victorious, and Barahir was slain, and Beren, escaping through great peril, came over the mountains of terror into the hidden kingdom of Thingol in the forest of Neldareth. There he beheld Luthien, singing and dancing in a glade beside the enchanted river Escalduin, and he named her Tinuviel, that is nightingale in the language of old. Many sorrows befell them afterwards, and they were parted long. Tinuviel rescued Beren from the dungeons of Sauron, and together they passed through great dangers and cast down even the great enemy from his throne, and took from his iron crown one of the 3 Silmarils, brightest of all jewels, to be the bride price of Luthien to Thingol, her father. Yet at the last Beren was slain by the wolf that came from the gates of Angband, and he died in the arms of Tinuviel. But she chose mortality, and to die from the world, so that she might follow him. And it is sung that they met again beyond the sundering seas, and after a brief time walking alive once more in the green woods, together they passed long ago beyond the confines of this world. So it is that Luthien Tinuviel, alone of the elf kindred, has died indeed and left the world, and they have lost her whom they most loved. But from her the lineage of the elf lords of old descended among men. There live still those of whom Luthien was the foremother, including Aragorn himself. And it is said that her line shall never fail. Elrond of Rivendell is of that kin. For of Beren and Luthien was born Dior, Thingol's heir, and of him Elwing the White, whom Earendil wedded, he that sailed his ship out of the mists of the world into the seas of heaven with the Silmaril upon his brow. And of Earendil came the kings of Númenor, that is Westerness. As Strider was speaking, they watched his strange, eager face, dimly lit in the red glow of the wood fire. His eyes shone, and his voice was rich and deep. Above him was a black, starry sky. Suddenly a pale light appeared over the crown of Weathertop behind him. The waxing moon was climbing slowly above the hill that overshadowed them, and the stars above the hilltop faded. One of my favorite things about reading Tolkien is that if he says the moon is waxing, he actually went ahead and figured out what the phases of the moon were for each stage of these journeys, how long it would take, and he's not just blowing smoke. He's not just telling you what the moon looks like because it looks good. It's a legit phase of the. They have a long conversation about it after Lothlorien, and I'm like, yeah. The stars above the hilltop faded. The story ended. Sort of. It's not much
Right.
ending, but okay.
He went into the Begats, and the hobbits stopped listening because nobody likes the Begats.
Yep. The hobbits moved and stretched. Look, said Merry. The moon is rising. It must be getting late. The others looked up. Even as they did so, they saw on the top of the hill something small and dark against the glimmer of the moonrise. It was perhaps only a large stone or jutting rock shown up by the pale light.
No, it wasn't. It was definitely a ringwraith.
It's totally a ringwraith. Oh, I found and bought the Encyclopedia of Tolkien, and it's got a thing about who the ringwraiths were. So it doesn't tell me like when they were each given a ring, but at least one of the others has a name, and he was one of the Haradrim. I can't remember his name. It was like Kadzal or something. And there were 3 that were Númenorian, and 4 that were just sort of generic Haradrim and Easterlings. I would dearly love to see, because Tolkien liked it when people wrote in his world or did art or wrote songs or whatever. And I would love to have like 9 authors each write the story of the 9 kings and how they fell. Wouldn't that be fun?
Yes. Okay, so hang on. Neil Gaiman,
Yes.
N.K. Jemisin.
Okay, yeah.
Who else?
All my favorites are dead. Bradbury could write a ring wraith origin story. But who else is alive? um
Who's alive and writing this particular type of fantasy? Because I know a lot of great authors that are alive.
Oh, Jane Yolen could do one.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. Who's writing sad?
Well, it's not even so much who's writing sad as like who's writing
Heavy?
yeah, and descriptive, not like
Right.
action oriented.
Absolutely. More atmospheric.
Yeah.
I don't know. I honestly don't. All of my favorites are very, very old or dead. I
Well,
don't
I think we've learned two things here, which is first of all, we need to think harder about it.
Yeah.
And second of all, you need to read more contemporary authors.
That'd be nice. Yeah. I'm such a picky reader, and there's so many new authors I pick up that I throw their book down in disgust after a couple of chapters because if they're not a wordsmith, I can't get into the story. If they miss an opportunity to construct a perfect sentence, I get flung out of there so violently I get bruised. So yeah,
Well,
that's
there
why I
are
couldn't.
wordsmiths in the world. You just got to find them.
Yeah, I couldn't. Did I tell you this already? I could not get into the Dresden Files. I'd heard,
Oh, well, no.
and they were so.
Yeah. No, that's not going to be, if you're looking for well-constructed sentences, you're not going to want to go towards like urban fantasy because typically it's more story driven, and also the Dresden Files themselves just aren't very good.
The story wasn't good. The characters weren't good. It wasn't just the wordsmithery was lacking. But if you're going to write a fucking potboiler detective novel and you're not taking the opportunity to write sentences like she walked into the room like a tsunami on legs, and I knew in that moment that I was going to regret this, or maybe that was just the heartburn. You got to have that.
Sarah Gailey.
Ooh.
They write, do you know Sarah Gailey?
No, but it sounds promising.
So they write sci-fi and fantasy, and their first series was called the American Hippo series, and it was set in an alternate history where the attempt to import hippos for writing in like the southern states actually worked, because this is a historical thing that happened. Somebody was like, we're going to farm hippos, and then that didn't work.
Okay.
But in this like series it did. So there's like riding hippos and then like feral hippos that everyone's afraid of because they're super dangerous.
Carriage
And
hippos.
Carriage
Carriage.
hippo. Not so much carriage hippos, because the thing about hippos, of course, is that they're aquatic, so people use them as like swimming mounts in like swamps.
Oh, okay.
Anyways, it's really cool. And then the most recent book that they came out with was a like noir detective story about a woman whose twin sister like what was a magician and went to like a Harry Potter style school and all this stuff, and the heroine was not magic. And
Cool.
was like, and just like kind of went off and became a private detective, and then there was a murder at the school where her sister teaches, the magic school.
Right.
And so the detective has to go and like solve that and also deal with the fact that she was the normal one.
That sounds kind of fun.
It's good. I think you would like it. You would like Gailey's writing style. Anyway, I was thinking that she could.
Valente do it. Could
Kat
Catherine
Valente.
She's a bit whimsical, but she might relish the opportunity.
I think she would relish it. I don't know. She's got that very, very particular style.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's a Tolkien-y style.
Yeah, I'd have to. I'd like to see it attempted. Anyway, so there we go. This needs to happen. Someone with authority needs to make it happen. Although,
agreed.
Yeah. They're not going to run out of material that Tolkien himself wrote anytime soon, and they're not likely to try making money off anything else until that's done. Sam and Merry got up and walked away from the fire. Frodo and Pippin remained seated in silence. Strider was watching the moonlight on the hill intently. All seemed quiet and still, but Frodo felt a cold dread creeping over his heart now that Strider was no longer speaking. He huddled closer to the fire. At that moment, Sam came running back from the edge of the dell. "I don't know what it is," he said, "but I suddenly felt afraid. I dursn't go outside this dell for any money. I felt that something was creeping up the slope." "Did you see anything?" asked Frodo, springing to his feet. "No, sir. I saw nothing, but I didn't stop to look." "I saw something," said Merry. "Or I thought I did. Away westwards, where the moonlight was falling on the flats beyond the shadow of the hilltops. I thought there were 2 or 3 black shapes. They seemed to be moving this way." "Keep close to the fire with your faces outward," cried Strider. "Get some of the longer sticks ready in your hands." "Beat them with sticks!" Ah! Okay. For a breathless time, they sat there, silent and alert, with their backs turned to the wood fire, each gazing into the shadows that encircled them. Nothing happened. There was no sound or movement in the night. Frodo stirred, feeling that he must break the silence. He longed to shout out aloud. "Hush!" whispered Strider. "What's that?" gasped Pippin at the same moment. Over the lip of the little dell, on the side away from the hill, they felt, rather than saw, a shadow rise. One shadow, or more than one. They strained their eyes, and the shadows seemed to grow. Soon there could be no doubt. 3 or 4 tall black figures were standing there on the slope, looking down on them. So black were they that they seemed like black holes in the deep shade behind them. Frodo thought that he heard a faint hiss, as of venomous breath, and felt a thin, piercing chill. Then the shapes slowly advanced. Terror overcame Pippin and Merry, and they threw themselves flat on the ground. Sam shrank to Frodo's side. Frodo was hardly less terrified than his companions. He was quaking as if he was bitter cold, but his terror was swallowed up in a sudden temptation to put on the ring. The desire to do this laid hold of him, and he could think of nothing else. He did not forget the barrow, nor the message of Gandalf, but something seemed to be compelling him to disregard all warnings, and he longed to yield, not with the hope of escape, or of doing anything either good or bad. He simply felt that he must take the ring and put it on his finger. He could not speak. He felt Sam looking at him as if he knew that his master was in some great trouble, but he could not turn towards him. He shut his eyes and struggled for a while. But resistance became unbearable, and at last he slowly drew out the chain and slipped the ring on the forefinger of his left hand. Immediately, though everything else remained as before, dim and dark, the shapes became terribly clear. He was able to see beneath their black wrappings. There were 5 tall figures, 2 standing on the lip of the dell, 3 advancing. In their white faces burned keen and merciless eyes. Under their mantles were long grey robes. Upon their grey hairs were helms of silver. In their haggard hands were swords of steel. Their eyes fell on him and pierced him, and they rushed towards him. Desperate, he drew his own sword, and it seemed to him that it flickered red, as if it was a firebrand. 2 of the figures halted. The third was taller than the others. His hair was long and gleaming, and on his helm was a crown. In one hand he held a long sword, and in the other a knife. Both the knife and the hand that held it glowed with a pale light. He sprang forward and bore down on Frodo. At that moment Frodo threw himself forward on the ground, and he heard himself crying aloud, "O Elbereth Gilthoniel!" At the same time, he struck at the feet of his enemy.
Yeah, like that.
A shrill cry rang out in the night, and he felt a pain, like a dart of poisoned ice, pierce his left shoulder. Even as he swooned, he caught, as through a swirling mist, a glimpse of Strider leaping out of the darkness with a flaming brand of wood in either hand. Very Rambo image, that. With a last effort, Frodo, dropping his sword, slipped the ring from his finger and closed his right hand tight upon it. End of chapter.
Well, I think that's a good stopping place. That gives you time to get outside before 8.
Right? I've been enjoying the howling. Sometimes there's only one neighbor, sometimes there's like 3 or 4. But it's always so good to see you.
Likewise.
Thank you for suggesting this, because I really, really like seeing you. And I'm sorry I don't read enough contemporary authors.
It's not a personality flaw. It's just an opportunity to read more contemporary authors.
Yeah. It's probably a personality flaw.
Look, you know I would tell you if I thought it was a personality flaw.
That's true. Go Bulldog Punches. I'll see you in a couple days, I hope.
Yes, indeed.
And you can read about Frodo going 17 days without bitching, because the Frodo of the book is so much more badass than the Frodo of the movie.
We'll look forward to that.
All right. I love you.
I love you too.
Cuidado.
Liamas.